The glaciers came down out of the north in their time and planed the country flat, and then they stopped. No one knows why they stopped. They stood at the edge of those hills like a thing rebuked, and then they withdrew and left the land beyond them, uncrumpled, folded, and dark, and thickly treed. And the stone lay in the ground there through ages without name until men dug it up and stacked it into chimneys and warmed their suppers against it. The house stood in those hills. In the house there was a hearth built of that stone, and the hearth rose from the floor of the front room up through the second story and out the roof. It was the summer of 1995. I was 15. My cousin Stephen was 13 and had come to stay the night, it being a Friday. We ate a pizza from a grocery called Knight's Corner. It was about 5 miles away, out on the highway. Art Knight made the best pizzas around. He'd always give us extra cheese. A king of a man. We played Super Nintendo in the gray light of the television. Outside in the west, a storm was building over the hills. Great anvil heads standing in the last light with the lightning working inside them, silent and sourceless like something signaling. We bedded down on the floor of the front room. Blankets and sleeping bags laid out before the couch, and the couch facing the hearth. Behind us, through the kitchen doorway, stood a window of 3 panes, and beyond the window, about 500 feet across an intermittent stream and a patch of woods, a neighbor kept a light burning on a pole. Men set out such lights against the dark the way their fathers set out fires and their fathers before them. The light crossed through a break in the timber over the creek and passed through the 3 panes and cast them tall and pale upon the stone of the chimney, 3 windows of light on the old rock. The storm came on toward 1 in the morning, rain heavy on the roof like gravel poured from a wheelbarrow, and the shadows of the branches swinging, projected shadows on the stone. Stephen lay still, and I believed him sleeping, for he always slept first, that being among the small, unquestioned orders of the world. And I lay awake and watched the light on the stone the way you would watch a fire. The man came into the light from the side, almost like the Alfred Hitchcock Presents opening. 1 moment, branches. Then the figure of a man stood on the stone in profile taller than the room, thin beyond the thinness of men, drawn out like something rendered, like a man seen in a fever, all length and angle. And I lay in my blankets and did not move, and told myself it was the branches conspiring, and I waited for the wind to unmake it. The wind did not unmake it. Think on the rain. I have thought on it for 30 years. It was rain to drown the ditches and beat the weeds flat. Rain that came off the hills in sheets, and everything that lived in that country had gone to ground before it. The deer stood soaked and patient under the poplars, and the owls kept to the barn gables, and even the dogs that would run all night lay under porches with their noses in their tails. Nothing that breathes stands out in such weather. Nothing that knows enough to come in out of it. A man caught in rain like that will run bent double with his coat over his head, cursing his luck, and a madman himself will stand under a tree. That is what warm-blooded things do, the sane and the mad alike. He stood in the open in the pouring dark, and he did not hunch against it, nor turn from it, nor pay it any mind at all. He stood in it the way a fence post stands in it, as if the rain were falling around him and not upon him, or as if rain were simply not among the things he had ever been given to know about. That was the wrongness of him, worse than the thinness, worse than the hour. Whoever would stay outside in that weather that severe has business the world is not part of. The figure raised its arms and began. There is no name for what it did. It was not dancing. It had the pattern of a thing done many times, the arms rising in hard angles and crossing before the body, and flung wide and drawn in again. The same forms repeated and repeated with small turnings between them, and the hands worked at the ends of the arms, the fingers spreading and closing in shapes that were not idle. Quick, certain shapes, made the way a man makes letters. Some office being kept out there in the rain. Some observance old and rehearsed and attended by nothing visible, performed with the surety of a rite, as though the field and the storm and the sleeping house were all of them furniture standing inside the borders of a church no one had told them of. I watched. Fear at that age does not let you run. It holds your eyes open like thumbs. After a long time, I whispered into the dark beside me, barely voiced at all. Are you seeing this? Nothing. The rain on the roof, the figure at its forms upon the stone. I took the silence for sleep and lay alone with the thing, the way each man lies, alone with what he has seen. And on the rock, the shadow sharpened until there was no story left to tell myself about branches. It was a man. A man stood outside in the rain, working his arms in the light, and there was no other account of it to be given. I whispered again, "Hey, are you awake? Are you seeing this?" And out of the dark beside me came my cousin's voice, small and wet and near to breaking. Yes, awake the whole of it. The two of us lying inches apart in the dark, each watching what the other watched and each holding silent, obedient to some instruction issued long before either of us, and long before the house, and long before the stone was raised out of the ground. Lie still, make no sound, do not tell it where you are. We were keeping still, as stones beneath a shadow that moved upon stone, and the rain coming down, and nothing in the wide night to say how long such rituals last. Toward 2 o'clock, a pair of headlights swung into the drive, my father coming in off a late shift. The lights raked the yard, and the rain stood in them like static. The figure turned. It turned all at once in the way of a thing surprised at its devotions, and it quit the light and was gone, and it went with cunning, keeping the bulk of the house between itself and the lights, choosing its ground even in flight, so that my father, crossing from his truck to the door through the pouring rain, saw nothing and suspected nothing, and shook the water from his body in the doorway, while Stephen and I came at him barefoot and both talking at once. A man just right outside, on the stone, doing something with his arms. My father laughed, not unkindly. He was tired, and the world he'd driven home through was the ordinary world, and it contained rain and mud and deer standing red-eyed at the road edge, and it did not contain what we were telling him. I would have seen someone when I pulled in, he said. He had seen no one. That was the whole of it. We looked out the window of 3 panes, and the outside lay empty in the security light, and the rain moved through the light in curtains, and the grass bent and straightened in the wind as if nothing had stood there. My father sent us back to our blankets. In time, the storm passed on to the east, dragging its thunder behind it, and the morning came up green and dripping over the hills, and the world resumed itself the way it does, indifferent, unamended, owing no explanations and offering none. Nothing was taken from that house. No harm came to any in it, then or after, that could be traced to that night by any reckoning men use. We grew up and went our ways into the world, and the house stood, and the chimney stood in it. But I carried it. Stephen carries it. Not the fear of the man, for men can be fled or fought or forgotten. What we carry is the knowing that the night around a house is not empty and never was, that it has its keepers and its kept hours, and its ceremonies conducted in the rain in the near dark, within a stone's throw of the sleeping and the loved, and that these observances require nothing of us, neither our terror, nor our belief, nor even our waking, being older than our houses and our lights and our roads, older maybe than the stone hauled up to build the hearths we sleep beside, and that on some nights, when the storm is up and the light lies right, the old stone will show you what walks there.